Thank you very much. Then the man in the blue suit reaches into his pocket and takes out a large sheet of paper, which he carefully unfolds and hands to me. It is covered with Picasso's handwriting, less spasmodic, more studied than usual. At first sight, it resembles a poem. 20 or so verses are assembled in a column, surrounded by broad white margins. Each verse is prolonged with a dash, occasionally a very long one. But it is not a poem. It is Picasso's most recent order for colours. For once, all the anonymous heroes of Picasso's palette troop forth from the shadows, with permanent white at their head. Each had distinguished himself in some great battle, the blue period, the rose period, Cubism, Guernica. Each could say, I too, I was there. And Picasso, reviewing his old comrade in arms, gives to each of them a sweep of his pen, a long dash that seems a fraternal salute. Welcome Persian red, welcome emerald green, cerulean blue, ivory black, cobalt violet, clear and deep. Welcome, welcome. And hello and welcome to the 2021 Colour and Poetry Symposium here at the Slade School of Fine Art. My name is Jo Volley. I'm the Deputy Director of Projects and Coordinator of the Materials Research Project and the Symposium Director. The symposium is in its third day now. In the last 2 days, we've had some extraordinary presentations and readings, and I expect more of the same today. We've got a fantastic lineup for you. So anyway, also, it is actually International Colour Day today and World Poetry Day. So with no further ado, we will move on to the first presentation of today, Machines Have Lucid Dreams by Ivan Kashdan and Blythe Joan. Are they there?
If, open bracket, whirly counter equals 0, close bracket, open brace. Wait, open bracket 10, close bracket, semicolon. See Roger.say, open bracket, quotation. Hello there, come to enjoy the breeze, quotation. Close bracket, semicolon. Whirly counter equals 1, semicolon, close brace. Else if, open brackets, whirly counter equals 1, close brackets, open brace. Wait, open bracket 10, close bracket, semicolon. See Roger.say, open brackets, quotation. Nothing else up here but the wind, quotation. Close bracket, semicolon. See Roger.say, but that's enough for some people. Quotation, close bracket, semicolon. Whirly counter equals 2, semicolon, close bracket. Else, if, open bracket, whirly counter 2 equals 1, close bracket, semicolon, brace. Wait, open bracket 10, close bracket, semicolon. See Roger.say, open bracket, quotation. It still hasn't arrived. I had hoped it would appear by now. Quotation, close bracket, semicolon. See Roger.say, open bracket, quotation. It still hasn't arrived. Quotation, close bracket, semicolon. See Roger.say, open bracket, quotation. I wonder where it could be. Quotation, close brackets, semicolon, whirly counter 2 equals 2, semicolon, close brace. Else if, open bracket, whirly counter equals 5, close brackets, open brace. Slash slash wait, open bracket 10, close bracket, semicolon, slash slash see Roger dot say, open bracket, quotation. I would do it myself, but, quotation, close bracket, semicolon, slash slash see Roger dot say, open bracket, quotation. As you can see, my hands are full, quotation, close bracket, semicolon, slash slash see Roger dot say, open bracket, quotation. Yes, I really could do with your help, quotation, close brackets, semicolon, slash slash see Roger dot say, open bracket, quotation. You might have to search a little more carefully, quotation, closed bracket, semicolon, see Roger dot say, open bracket, quotation. I need, quotation, close bracket, semicolon, slash slash see Roger dot say, open bracket, quotation, something living and something to prop it up, quotation, close bracket, semicolon. Whirly counter equals 6, semicolon, close brace. Else if, open brackets, PP found equals 0, close brackets. And open brackets, LN counter equals 0. Close brackets, and open brackets, prophecy equals 1. Close bracket, open brace. Slade dot say. Open brackets, quotation. May I ask, how have you found me, child? Quotation, close bracket, semicolon, close brace. Else if, open brackets, PP found equals 0, close brackets, and open bracket, LN counter equals 0, close brackets, and open bracket, prophecy equals 1, close bracket, open brace, Slade dot say, open bracket, quotation. There is a darkness that gathers at the head of this tree, quotation, close bracket, semicolon. Else if, open brackets, PP counter, open bracket 2, close bracket, equals 1, close bracket, and open bracket, well line equals 0, close bracket, open brace, slash PPS dialogue, Slade dot say. If we can contain the dark, quotation, close brackets, semicolon, Slade dot say, open brackets, quotation, it becomes ours, our very own. Quotation, close bracket, semicolon, open brace. Else, if, open brackets, countenance equals 0, close brackets, and open bracket ln counter equals 0 close bracket and open bracket prophecy equals 0 close brackets open brace wait open bracket 50 close bracket semicolon Slade dot say open brackets quotation there was a time when I told fortunes for those who live in the town below quotation close brackets semicolon Slade dot say I appear to have forgotten myself quotation close brackets semicolon countenance equals 1 close brace else if C guardian equals 1 close bracket open brace C guardian speech dot say open brackets quotation there are some pretty flowers that grow in the citadel quotation close brackets semicolon C guardian speech dot say there are some pretty flowers quotation close brackets semicolon if one was to go at night quotation close bracket semicolon C guardian speech dot say open bracket quotation and tread quietly quotation close bracket semicolon C guardian speech dot say open brackets quotation pull a few from the ground quotation close bracket semicolon prone to cloud equals 1 quotation close brace else if open bracket prone to cloud equals 1 close bracket open brace C prone to dot say open bracket quotation I've noticed you tend to view things from the same angle quotation close bracket semicolon C prone to dot say open bracket quotation I suggest quotation close bracket semicolon C prone to dot say open bracket quotation lying on your back quotation close bracket semicolon prone to cloud equals 2 semicolon close brace else if open bracket prone to cloud equals 2 close bracket open brace C prone to dot say open brackets quotation can you remember how to lie down quotation close bracket semicolon wait open bracket 50 close bracket semicolon C prone to dot say open bracket quotation I'd show you how to do it but quotation close bracket semicolon C prone to dot say open bracket quotation well I'm not sure if I can remember quotation close bracket semicolon slash open bracket 30 close bracket semicolon CC prone to dot say open bracket quotation how to stand quotation close bracket semicolon prone to cloud equals 3 semicolon closing brace else if open bracket prone to cloud equals 3 close bracket open brace slash C prone to dot say open bracket quotation how can you stand it quotation open bracket close semicolon CC prone to dot say open bracket quotation all that walking around quotation close bracket semicolon prone to cloud equals 4, semicolon, close brace. Else if open bracket prone to cloud equals 4, close brace, open brace. C prone to dot say, open bracket, quotation. I prefer the sky these days. Quotation, close brackets, semicolon, close brace, close brace.
Thank you very much. I'm simply getting feedback. Ivan.
See if we can get some sound back.
Yeah.
I can hear us okay?
Yeah, that's fine. It's me getting feedback. You switch off.
Oh no, yes, I'll turn my microphone off. I'll just listen instead.
Well, it's just to say thank you and to apologise for not saying that was original music that you'd made and words and footage of the sky, and that you're both studying at or interrupting from at the Slade in graduate fine art media. And I don't know if you've been coming the last few days to be able to see the symposium, but I've been giving everyone a little gift of colour, and I wanted to give you and Blythe a little pearlescent landscape each. I've made you, so I'll post that.
Oh, thank you very much.
I thought of you, and I thought that you would. I don't know. I just thought that would be the thing that you would do.
Thank you.
And just to say that some nice messages coming through and how dreamy and lovely that was. We're going to move on swiftly now to James Keith, who was an artist and Slade print technician, and he's going to give a James is going to give a demonstration on marbling.
I am. Good morning, everyone.
I can't see. I can only see your name, James.
I should be on. There should be a
picture
of a tray. Yeah. Can you see that? Can we pin that?
Is it just? Ah, got it. Got the wrong one. Sorry, Dan. Thank you. Go ahead. I'll shut up.
Thank you very much. Can you see that now? Because now I can just see your name, Joe.
Oh.
I've pinned the tray. Let me just spotlight again. Yeah.
Yes, it disappeared.
Excellent. Well, hello. Thank you, everybody. So what I'm going to do today is a type of marbling known as sumi nagashi. So it's from a Japanese technique. Sumi nagashi, as I understand it, roughly translating as something like floating ink, or ink floating, possibly spilled ink, I've heard it as well. So it's a very, as the name suggests, it's about floating some ink on some water and then transferring that to some paper. I suppose the major differences between this and what we call traditional Western marbling, or Ebru or Turkish marbling, is sometimes known, that uses a thickened water or size to drop color onto and then drag it around into patterns. With this, I'm just going to be using some water and some color and a dispersing agent to push them apart. In traditional technique, I think it's using oxgall, which is as a strong surfactant to sort of push the color apart on the water. But the ingredient I'm using in this case is washing up liquid, which works perfectly for this. The other materials, we're going to be using some watercolor paints. I've got some Winsor & Newton professional watercolors and some gouache paint, and calligraphy ink also works excellently for this. Oh, can you see that? I seem to have frozen. There we go, thank you. The sort of colors I'm going to use will be thinned down a little bit and have some of this washing up liquid, this surfactant added into it, and hopefully you'll see the reason for that is it sort of pushes apart and allows different areas of color to stay completely separate from one another. The sort of colors we need to use will be, like I say, watercolors effectively, that sort of float on the surface of the water. Anything like, say, watercolors, gouache paint, those sort of Indian ink calligraphy type inks will work. Avoid things like acrylic paint, which will dry almost instantly on the surface and form a sort of skin. So it's water based and water, things that remain water soluble, I suppose, once they dry, that will work. I've got a couple of colors ready and I'm going to mix up a little bit now just quickly, because I know watching somebody mix and paint probably isn't the most thrilling of activities. And I will have, we'll probably get a few sheets of different colors done. And perhaps it may be that I just fall silent at some point because it's a fairly lengthy process, but if that's the case, have another piece of toast, some more coffee, and hopefully it'll be a vaguely relaxing thing to watch. I'm starting with a little bit of this Prussian blue watercolor. I've squirted a bit onto my palette and I'm going to add in a bit of water. Let's drop us some in. Just enough to make a fairly liquid mixture. A way of testing it, I've got a little pot with some water in here, and it should, that's actually quite thick still, not quite mixed it all in. If I just touch the tip of the brush onto the water, it should just release a little bit of the colour onto the surface, which tells me it's approximately right. I'm going to start doing this for real. Perhaps you will see how it behaves, and you might end up modifying it, adding a bit more water, adding a little bit more detergent, and so on. Any kind of marbling is an incredibly capricious and occasionally difficult process. Sometimes it works perfectly first time, sometimes it can be intensely frustrating and doesn't work first time, second time, third time, or fourth time. But I'm just pouring some water into my little tray. I'm using a flat bottomed, neutral colored plastic tray. It could be obviously for larger work. You can use large developing trays or a roasting tin with a bit of tin foil in it, that sort of thing. Any kind of shallow tray with, you can just hold some water in. And the idea is I'll take 2 brushes. For this I'm using some, they're just fairly cheap synthetic brushes for acrylic paint or watercolor. And I've got a jar here which has it's just some water with a few drops of washing up liquid. So I'm going to take 2 brushes, one which I'm going to load with the soapy detergent water, and one which I'm going to load with my color. I've built a little support for my hands so they're not actually touching the tray itself. And I'm hoping that the water has sort of settled a little bit. The surface of the water needs to be, or the water should be completely still. I think it's just about stopped moving enough. And so I'm starting with the brush with the color on it to bring it down. It should be that, I hope you can see that when I touch the surface of the water. I'm really aiming to just put the tip of the brush in contact, but not actually break the surface tension on the water itself. And you should see it loading it with a little bit of color. And if I touch it with the second brush that has that detergent in it, it just instantly pushes it apart. And then it's a case of repeating and repeating. So the key is really not to overload the brush with either of the colors on, either the color or the detergent. If there's a great big droplet of color there, it will just fall straight through the water. And if there's too much of the detergent there, it will push everything way apart into the edges of the tray. So it's all about there's a kind of dance and a balance between the consistency of the color, whether the water is moving or not, the amount of surfactant on the other brush, and how hard you press, how accurately you can just touch the skin of the water without breaking it. And I would just keep going until the tray's full of all these rings of colour. When it does work, I find it an intensely compulsive activity that I can easily lose an afternoon to this for absolutely no good reason. Of course, you might decide to start adding some rings in a different position. Let's put a bit over here. So I think for a first attempt this morning, let's leave it there. What you'll find with this process, there's very little you can do in the way of predicting, I suppose, you can predict the type of pattern that's going to happen, but you really just have to follow what happens when you start laying the color down, that it's going to follow its own pattern on the surface of the water. So there's little you can do to sort of manipulate it, I suppose. You almost have to sort of follow it and let it do what it wants to do. But also once this is, you can see, I don't know if you can see, it's just beginning to sink a little bit. The colors beginning to sort of merge into the water slightly, so it's best time to actually print it. You can also affect by perhaps just a gentle blowing on the surface will just distort all those lines in a pleasing way. And the paper I've got is some watercolor paper, so it's I'm not much point showing you a piece of paper, but it's a piece of cotton watercolor paper, and I've applied earlier on some alum. So this is alum is potassium aluminium sulfate. It's a treatment often used in dyeing. It's a mordant to help dye stuff stick often to a fabric. It's also used in marbling to apply it to the paper to help the color sort of bond to it when you lay it onto the surface of the water. So it's essentially just a white powder. I've made a solution of it of about 10% and brush that all over some sheets of paper, let them dry. And to print it off, I'm going to just I'm sort of bending the paper down so it's just touching the surface. It is really beginning to sink, so it might be rather faint because I'm talking too much. And just let it rest on the surface of the water for a minute and try and just gently press over the back to make sure it's contacted everywhere. When we turn it over, there should be an impression there. There we go. I'm just going to let it sit under the water for a second and rinse it slightly. Now, can you actually get that in focus? It looks very blurry to me, but hopefully you can see that it's actually taken an impression onto the paper. I'm just going to let that drain off for a second before I get rid of it, and we'll try another one. I'm going to try using the same bath of water again, clean out the brush slightly. And perhaps this time I've got two other colours on here, which are this lovely Windsor violet and some cadmium yellow in gouache, which again I've just diluted a little bit with water and just got a drop or two of the washing up liquid soapy water in there. So I'm going to try using both of those and a bit of the soapy water again to create a two-colour version. So I'm just loading the two brushes with the different colours, almost holding them a little bit like chopsticks. So I've got the two colour brushes in one hand. That's got a bit of a drip that's about to fall off. There we go. So I understand that this process dates back to around about the 12th century with some very strict rules. I think it was normally only ever in black stick ink, and if there were colours, I think indigo and a red were allowed, but little else. Now you can see this gouache paint is rather heavy. It's all beginning to sink very quickly, so I think I'll act as quick as I can. Maybe do a smaller one with this. This time is also going to begin running out soon, I think. So I think we'll definitely say that this colour needs to be thinned down a little bit, but I'm going to just blow on it slightly. I've got a little tube just to allow that to move around a little. And the second paper I wanted to try, it's I've also treated with alum. This is some Hosho, which is a Japanese paper often used for woodblock printing or ink painting. Again, I've treated it in exactly the same way. I'm just going to lay it down on the surface as I did for the first one. And hopefully we'll get some rather delicate, where that orange has begun to sink, it's rather faint, but rather delicate and beautiful. Before time runs out completely, I will attempt one more. If you bear with me, I'm going to dispense with this water. Pour in another jug full of water to be trained. And so I've got a little pot here of this is some of the Winsor & Newton, some calligraphy ink in a sepia colour, which I've been using previously. Again, it's a fairly runny liquid ink, obviously, as it comes for working with dip pens and brushes and so on. Again, I've just added to a small amount in a pot like this, I've added a little bit of the detergent. And perhaps we'll try that in conjunction with the blue, see how it goes. As ever, rather light to begin with. You'll probably find usually that the second time I touch it on, it will become a little stronger. There we go. I'll leave that there with the brown. Move on to using some of the blue watercolour I prepared earlier. Again, just loading the brush with that. I'm going to start it, say, over here. It's rather heavy. Of course, as you add more and more of these rings and fill up the tray, there's a kind of counter tension going on to each individual ring of color, and each ring of the soap water repel one another, so they'll never actually merge. And of course, as the tray fills up, this becomes a bit of, I think there's a bit of kind of back tension there that pushes back to the pieces you're doing now, or the color you're adding now, creates a kind of counter current in the water that limits how far each bit can move. I can't resist. I'm going to go back to the brand for a minute. As with so many things, it's difficult to know where to stop, but I think maybe it's about there. Go back again to a piece of that nice thick watercolor paper. Bend down, lay it onto the surface. I don't know if you can see that through my mobile phone camera, but it has an extraordinary sort of fidelity to it that it really picks up every tiny little band. It's almost like, I find them endlessly fascinating, almost like polished stone or wood grain, I guess. And that, at 10:41, is about it.
James, can you
I
hear
think,
me?
yes, I think that's about it.
It's brilliant. Sorry, I'm fiddling around. You've got loads of questions in the chat.
Good.
So here we
I'll
go.
put my
Well, you can see the chat, can't you?
I can. Now I'm back on the other screen. There we go. Can you use a comb to make a Bakewell tart icing effect? Well,
there's quite a lot before that.
You can.
By the way.
Oh no. So there are.
Yeah, go start at the beginning. James, how much detergent do you need?
Well, that really is quite dependent. Like so many things, it's a little bit variable, but it's with what I was using was just a little jar of water with a few drops in it, a little squirt. And I think, like everything, you just have to test it and see if it's too strong, it will push everything apart really quickly. If it's not strong enough, it will just be a little bit weak, I suppose, and not really do very much. But it's, you know, what maybe a little jar like you'd use for cleaning brushes with some drops in it. The next person says, that's great. Do you use a visualizer to record the task with Zoom? No. For this, I've just been using I've actually just got my phone joined to the Zoom meeting and rigged up on there's a tripod with a little clamp on it that holds the phone in place. Alum you can get in lots of art suppliers. I'm not sure exactly where I got mine from, but especially people who do materials for dyeing. So someone like George Vile, those sort of companies, sell that kind of material. And the name of the material that's on the brush for that paint is Ecover washing up liquid, but it could be many other brands available. And the name of the technique is Suminagashi. Sharon says, does it always have to be circles? Well, I suppose it really, again, pushing the way that you're using a natural process. So I suppose they're always going to want to be, they're going to form concentric rings like that. Then it's maybe a matter of how you actually, what's the word? Manipulate that to some extent. They're always going to be concentric rings, but then perhaps the more complicated you make it, you let them fall into each other. And by blowing on it and disturbing the surface, you're going to change that pattern. And using a comb would be, because we're just using water, in the type of marbling where you see those combing patterns would usually be in a thing with thickened size bath, so that when you comb through it, it is fairly slow and you can actually control it to some extent. With this, if you do any more than blowing on it or dragging, I mean, I know technique originally was to use maybe a single hair and drag through the surface of the water so you can make as little disturbance as possible. Anything big like a comb is probably going to make the water really kind of swirl away and become quite uncontrolled. Jane Wilton says, I know what I'll be doing tomorrow. Fantastic. That's the correct response. Thinner paper for wrapping paper, will it just buckle up? Well, actually, very thin paper works really well. That Japanese paper I was using, the Hosho is about 50 GSM. So it really depends. When you're drying it, I tend to lay them out on while the paper's quite wet, I'd lay them on a smooth, like a bit of melamine board or a sheet of glass or some Perspex. And so if they lay flat and stay fairly flat while they're drying, they won't cockle up too much. Lordy says, do you have to use alum? Not necessarily, but again, it really depends on your paper. I found with that watercolor paper I was trying to use, it just would not stick without using the alum, which I was surprised by. That I chose to use the watercolor paper because a lot of them have a surface sizing, something like a gelatine or a starch added to the surface that helps the watercolor paint stick to it, usually when you're working with a brush. So on that basis, a lot of watercolor papers work quite well for this process as they are without adding the alum treatment. For some reason, some papers really need it as well. So again, like everything, you're going to have to test it depending on the paper you want to use. Funnily enough, like cheap photocopier paper works quite well as it is without any extra treatment. And someone says exactly when I tried, the paint didn't stay on and fell off immediately. So it's probably that you do need to have some alum on it that makes it stick, or try a different paper, frankly. And they're still coming. Does the alum fix it permanently, especially watercolor? Yes, especially where it's bonded. You can see when I was taking the print, I suppose you could call it, you can rinse it under the water, and where it's stuck to the alum, it's not going to come off anymore. So you can't, if you're near a sink, you can actually run it under a gently running water, and it will take away the excess and give you a nice sort of high contrast between the bits that are bonded and the paper itself. And the alum you do mix with water. If you're doing it yourself, I wear gloves. It's not a horrifically toxic chemical, but take precautions working with anything. And I made about a 10% solution. And the stuff I bought said for paper marbling, have 10 grams of alum to about a litre of water, which I found was absolutely nowhere near enough. It was more like 100 grams to a litre of water. It's a sort of 100 grams. Yeah, 50 grams to half a litre, so about 10%. And just mix it up with a little bit of hot water in a jug, let it go cold, brush it or sponge it onto the paper. Otherwise, I think that's
got more questions. Sorry, James.
No, I think that's.
That's it.
That's hopefully it, I think. Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about, I mean, I've seen you do this many times. Well, I've seen many times, actually, several times.
Once or twice.
Materials research project. No, I've seen you practicing as well in the Slade. And I was very curious to see how you're going to manage it on Zoom. And I just wanted you to talk a little bit, actually, not so much about this, but, you know, that we've all been working on Zoom for this last academic year, and you have been, you know, we've been doing workshops and you've been doing workshops particularly, and I just wondered if you could talk a little bit about that before we move on, because it'd be interesting to.
I mean, about actually just in general working on Zoom.
In general, how has it been, you know, and what's been the experience, you know, because in some ways we've reached, I know from my materials research and things you've done for me and the lunchtime lectures, we've reached bigger audiences in a
this sense. Is it. I mean, I think there's, you know, with all of these things, there are pros and cons that, and actually there are certain things about this that are better, that being able to do something like this, where, you know, if it was in a studio at the Slade, then you'd be able to have about 5 people crowding around to actually see what's going on in the tray. To do something, a demonstration like this with a camera rigged up is so much easier for however many people are here to actually look at. And likewise for, you know, all of the materials research stuff. Again, I did like every year I do a paper talk for you, but the great side of that is I can reach more people, we can reach more people, we can talk about things and make a presentation much more easily. But then what you're missing is obviously the haptic, the touching. You know, what I always like to do with paper is pass it around and get people to touch it and feel the difference between different things. So there's obviously downsides, but I think, yeah, it's been a challenge. But it's definitely had its, and I think probably as we move on out of this, whatever this is, there are definitely certain things about it, the practice that we've developed, that I think will be good to carry on with. And I think, you know, there's going to be things will never be quite the same, will they?
No, one feels one can't quite go back.
Not quite, no.
You know, there's certain things. Anyway, that was wonderful. I didn't know, I asked you to do it. I didn't know how you were going to do it, but it's been fantastic to see that again. And it's got a great, there's some really interesting comments coming through as well.
Yeah, it's a lovely, simple thing. Have a go.
Yeah. And I have a little gift for you, as I've been giving to people, and I've tried to, it's a very little gift, which has come out of my Colour a Day project, with a swatch of colour every day to track this year, which wasn't tracking the COVID, it's actually tracking the first year of World Pigment Day, which is tomorrow, which Ruth Siddle and myself declared last year. But we've also been working on developing a pigment farm at the Slade, haven't we? And you're probably founder members of it. And even though we're not growing plants as we envisaged in the quad and around campus, for obvious reasons, some of us are growing things, plants to extract colour from and make dyes and pigments. And you've got an allotment, and you've been you're growing a few things, and one of them you've been growing rose madder, haven't you?
Madder, indeed, yeah. Which will
I have a lovely swatch of genuine rose.
Oh, look at that.
For you. And I read the other day, not only does it take about 2 years for it to grow, or 2 or 3 years for it to grow, it then takes another 5 years, I think, for the roots to be right to it.
So that will keep us going, and that will be my. I'll get it up on the wall. Is something to aspire to for many years in the future, eh?
Yeah, absolutely. So anyway, thanks a lot. We're surprisingly ahead of ourselves, but I know Fabian Peake is here, so I'm hoping that he's happy to start a bit sooner. Fabian, are you there?
Yes, Joe.
Hello, you're right. We got a bit worried because we couldn't find you.
Yeah,
you're there.
Right. Oh, there I am. Yeah.
There you are. How lovely
Can't
to
see
see you.
that.
Thank you for joining us, Slade, on
Oh,
World International Colour Day. And
thank you very much. Can you hear me okay?
wonderful.
Oh, good.
And I'm delighted to have Fabian Peake here. He's a painter and writer based in London. His work is concerned with the conflict between the flatness of the wall and the space immediately in front of the wall. Paint is an extremely broad phenomenon. The mist becomes the mountain. His writings locate itself in a poetic equivalent to painting. His poems employ thought processes that are linked more to painting than to literature. Poems are paintings, paintings are poems. As one of 12 artists asked by the International Association of Arts Critics in collaboration with Peer to make sound pieces, Peake wrote an experimental poem inspired by his time in the studio during the first lockdown. This poem, along with other artists' work, was broadcast on Resonance Radio last August. And thank you for being here, and over to you, Fabian. Notes for a poem.
Yes, thanks very much, Joe, and, and I enjoyed the James talk very much as well, just to say that, and the first one as well. Yes, that what you've just said, Joe, I got a little sheet of notes to say before the notes, but now you've said most of it, so I probably don't need to say that, but it's very much it reflects my interest in the development of ideas, whether it's painting, drawing, a poem, or any other creative form. I'm really interested in the stages from the very beginning through the middle and towards the end. Obviously, I like what happens at the end if I'm happy with the painting or the poem, but it's how it develops that's what really interests me. And they do have a way of developing in a very similar way, even though a page of poetry looks very different from a page of painting or a drawing. And the thing that binds them is by the way it all swirls around in my head, and the information for the particular form, and then it sort of starts getting written down or painted on a blank canvas, but the blank canvas, having had a lot of things put down on it, can very often be scrubbed off and started again, and it's almost a question of the ideas having to prove themselves and settle. I said here, the writing reflects my interest in the development of ideas, whether it is a painting, a drawing, poem, creative form. The development may take one into all sorts of unexpected territory before finding a place to settle, or better still, not to settle. So I don't care what happens. I'm just sort of wanting to see, I'm wanting to surprise myself in the process of developing ideas, because quite often I start with a very clear idea of something that I want to do, but it changes so quickly after I've begun the procedure. So this poem, if I could call it that, that I've written, has a kind of collaged feeling about it. Collaged one tends to think of as a visual thing. A lot of us being visual artists, but I think very often other art forms have the same attributes too, and so this poem I'm about to read is might sound a bit patchy and jumping around, but that's the way I like to work. I like things that butt up against each other and argue with each other, and sort of maybe sometimes they're very conducive, and other times they're very violent and don't want to be together. So this poem reflects that. And it is to do with being in my studio where I work in London, and you can be in your studio while not being there as well. You might be out sort of getting the shopping at Sainsbury's, but your head is in your studio, you know. So this is all coming out of the studio. Right, I'll shut up now and get on with it. So it's called Notes for a Poem. Sometimes it is there, sometimes not. It leans against flettons, casting shadows on bowls of junket. The sound is waiting to be heard. I will look at islands on the floor. Islands or lakes, you decide. They dry and peel. The blue door approaches me. The waters she wrote about are rips in the cloth, west of here, east of there. I looked on the map, made comparisons. The only similarity was in the clawed out holes. To step into my map is easy. I walk through the door. I look at the water. It made itself while I watched other things. For now, I'll staple up the drawing without marks. I won't say because I don't know. Would I say if I knew? I ask myself if I know, and ask about them. What do they think? What do I think? Do I know? I can't say. I don't know what is hidden. There is something here hidden, ghastly as a dragon. All those others expound their truths and cocky certainty. I don't know mine, so there's naught to say. Have I buried it? What if I have? The pain in my neck is there. A sponge hiding beneath a wooden crate is unknown to me. If I stumbled upon it, would I know? Is stumbling across something the only way to know something? Does the antelope hide its droppings? It forgets where it left them. What have I hidden? I read the words as they diminish into the gutter. Some books wait their turn, thinking of what's in their bellies. I want to stand between or among words, picking at them, holding groups to a mirror. I sing and I hear my song. Is that from me? Asks the music maker. My voice screams through wood, through brass, through strings. I am a trumpet and I have ears. The only wardrobe I knew was in the corridor. As the blue gates opened, the lakes could be seen. They spoke. We are the islands too. We are dry. We are what his eyes tell us when they come through the door. We are what he wants us to be. He comes in here, looks at us from a chair. Sometimes he is savage, sometimes demulcent. He doesn't always know. Does he know what he doesn't know? We mumble in the dark with the hammers and set squares, waiting for his eyes. In the dead of night, we hear the wasp spit out its paper lampshade. The lakes are hard as concrete. 3 months ago, the pink shunter was built on that floor. Today, it's the tabernacle and the altar cloth. The lost pear tree, he works against the wall where once it stood. We feel the pokings of his hand and the candy floss blooming on our back. Time and the climbing boys are now gone. The ads is on the wall. The ads is not on the wall. It is in the mind of the machine. Inside that walled room, I am taken back to the long benches by the little house. The secret taunts us from within. My 12-year-old boy's mind could not prise open the doors. I strained to know what was in the gold. In the cave, those rocks were told, "You will be ground to powder." Weeping, they said, "We are the beautiful blue. The painters will come for us." Hear ye, the cellos of morning. See the cat's licking tongue in the clear water. Smell the resting hand in the evening's approach. Taste the juice from the pores of a frightened afternoon. Touch the slant of mercy in yesterday's apprehension. How has he left the apple or the head on the coin while he makes the tabernacle? On resumption, he will brush a sigh of green on the red streaked one, and the squares will dissolve in the mist. We have kept quiet for years. How long have our faces been pasted together? Your dream is mine, and mine is yours. All day we journey through answers unrecognized. We are in here among the lakes and islands to cut the rind from a volcanic thought. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That was wonderful. Thank you, Fabian. And it's so, it's wonderful to see. I think it's some of your work behind you, is it?
It's interesting. It's the higher one on the yellow wall is a drawing by. Yeah. The other one is an interesting story actually. It's when Phillida and I were very young, we collected art a little bit, and I went into Casmin's gallery in the 60s, and they had a set of prints by well-known artists, and there were 10 in this packet, and the whole packet was £100. But I said, would they mind splitting it up just to 2 that I wanted. One was by Larry Poons.
Oh yeah.
And this one was by Stuart Davis. And they let me do that. And they were £10 each.
Yeah. £10. That's yeah. That was a very good. They were very good buys.
Yes, yeah. And so sorry, I should.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's the lady herself.
Yes,
Nice to see you. And it's so lovely. Actually, it is lovely to see, because I was thinking of sometime in the 90s, I brought a group of students from the Slade and from the summer school, and we came into your studio, both of your studios in the garden, and you both gave wonderful talks and you read some of your poems then, didn't you?
Oh, yeah.
And about that time, you gave me this little book.
Oh yeah,
It's
yeah.
1996, isn't it? And
Yeah.
in it, there's lovely drawings and short poems.
Yes.
And this one I love very much because it makes me think of you both. And it's called The Welding Class.
Yeah.
Can you remember to recite it, or shall I read it to you?
I know exactly what you meant. I couldn't recite it though.
I'll read it to you. The Welding Class.
Yeah.
She brought me home a rose of welded metal, a slender stem with a head of tempered petals. I found a cut glass vase, blew away the dust, immersed the rod in water, and watched the flower rust. You know? That's beautiful. I love that. And in relation to collage, we're talking about collage, and of course the theme of the show this year.
Yeah.
Collage as well, which you've contributed.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. And so I've made you a little collage.
Oh, fantastic.
It's rather mad. It's sort of in different parts, so you can arrange it.
Oh, terrific.
But that is some rust. That is rust. Iron solution.
Yeah, is it? Yeah.
I made, and for some reason I had you as silver as well. But this is, you know. It's tarnishing silver as well.
That's beautiful.
That's a gift.
Thank you very much
for your wonderful gift of coming and speaking again to us here and at the Slade. I keep saying we're at the Slade, I'm really in Kentish Town, but and also sharing this fantastic day with us as you have done before.
No, it's a great pleasure.
Thank you. I don't know if there's any, it's difficult to have questions after something like that, but there's, thank you Fabian, brilliant juxtaposition of images, questions and negations, the space of Keats, negative capability. That's from Sharon.
Oh yeah. Nice. Yes. Thank you, Sharon.
Joe.
Yes.
Joe, just the
Yes, Philip Barlow. Philip Barlow, how lovely to see you on this wonderful.
Such a lovely event, Joe. Really great. But the welded rose was my 5th attempt to learn welding. And I failed. Failed.
Was that when we were teaching at the Slade in the 90s?
Yes, I went.
We could go on, John Aitken said we could go on some courses, and I wanted to go on a welding course. He wouldn't let me. He wouldn't let me.
Well, I was.
And you failed. And now, hang on a minute.
I was sent to do it, and I was at the same time as a large school was also attending the same place, and everybody had to choose a partner, and of course no one wanted to come with me except this one quite large boy. He and I were sort of stuffed into a cubicle together, and both of us absolutely hated welding. So it was yet another failure to chalk up, you know.
Great story. Yeah. Thank you. That's brilliant.
Lovely to hear you reading that. Fantastic, Joe.
You've still got, you've got a copy still of it, I hope. Have you?
Yes. And James's demonstration was just fantastic.
Yes.
And thank you.
Oh yeah. Sorry, I was muted. Yeah. Oh, that was terrific opportunity there, Joe.
Thank you. We're getting a lot of feedback now. I'm not quite sure. So we're
oh,
is it that what it is?
Yeah, sorry. There we are.
Oh, it's so nice to hear to you. Yeah. Thank you. Okay. And what I forgot to say this morning that today is a slightly different pace. It's a lot of readings and performance and practical workshops, which the other days had been mostly presentations and readings. So it's kind of a sort of a moving around day to day, and a lot of Slade students and a lot of ex-Slade students are working working. Yeah, they're working today. They're presenting today.
Yeah.
So I'm going to move on to another. We're going to have another demonstration. So Gabriella Giraletti, are you there? She is
here, Joe.
Hello.
Hello.
See you.
Good to see you. Thank you for having me.
We're on time, and you're going to give a presentation called, I don't know who named it. Was it me who made you call it?
I think it was you or Steph.
No, I'm terrible.
I don't remember actually.
Anyway, an exploration of pouring mediums and colour mixing with Gabriella Giraletti, artist and TFAC demonstrator. Gabriella is a painter, a wonderful painter, a painter based in London whose work explores the possibilities of painting in practice and metaphorical terms. Experimentation is the key to her practice. Go for it, Gal.
Thank you for the introduction, Joe. Good morning, everyone. Happy International Color Day and World Poetry Day, and it's the second day of spring. I'm very excited for spring this year. I'm gonna share my screen. And then you will let me know if you're seeing just my PowerPoint presentation.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
Okay. Right. So I prepared a little presentation to introduce you to the pouring medium and what it can do. And I'll show you some videos as well that I recorded in my studio. Internet in my studio can be very patchy. So to avoid problems today, I just recorded the practical bits there. So I'll start with some slides and context, and then we'll move on to actually pouring. Pouring mediums. In the world of painting, we are familiar with mediums, but what are those for those who are not familiar with the word mediums? A medium can be the actual binder for pigment or be used as an extender for ready mixed paints, which is the case today, that we're talking today. A pouring medium is a medium that is used to improve the consistency of acrylic paints, allowing them to pour more fluidly. Mixing your paints with a pouring medium will enable you to create smooth pools of color, stripes, and interesting accidents, basically. Liquitex has 3 versions of the pouring medium. The traditional one, which will give you a sort of glossy finish, the matte version, and the iridescent version. We are going to try them all today. So, 1 second. So for a little inspiration, I've put together some examples of cool painters that pour color as part of their practices. This is, I'm sure you know, Linda Benglis, who did this famous pouring paintings / sculptures, extending painting onto the floor and into the realm of sculpture. So she used latex, metal, wax, foam, sometimes just paint, like she's doing there, glue as well. And then we have Frank Bowling here. I just love his work. I'm sure most of you saw his show at Tate Britain last year or the year before last. He built a platform in his studio that allowed him to pour paint from heights of up to 2 meters. Here are some examples of his work. Sorry if the image on the left is a bit pixelated. I didn't realize that. And then someone I discovered recently, his name is Harminder Judge. He makes these pour paintings using plaster, pigment, and polymer. I really like this work. The pour's form becomes the work's form, let's say. Sometimes he trims it off just for the sake of the composition. But you can say that he's inspired by the movement of color. like a collaboration with the material. And I guess it's fair to say we all collaborate with our materials now. And then I thought I should mention Ian Davenport with his color falls. He tilts the surface vertically so that the gravity and the consistency of the paint determine the final composition. Really like the bottom part where paint is flowing more freely and mixing. And then Houghton Rower, using gravity to paint, very performative. I didn't know, but he's Alexander Calder's grandson. Just a little bit of random information. He started pouring like this in the 2000s. The work is very sculptural, and I think he plays a lot with control and chance. You can see on the image here on the right, when where he's pouring, that he placed pins on the surface here, so it can disrupt the movement of paint. Very psychedelic work. And then the last artist I want to mention is, Andrea Tompkins, a Swiss artist who created unpredictable compositions, and this is an example. Manipulating color by pouring, dripping, and using his own breath to move color around the surface. So these are the artists I want to show you as good examples of the tradition of pouring. So as I said in the beginning, Liquitex has 3 different types of pouring medium. The gloss, which was their first product of this kind, the iridescent, and the matte. Iridescent and matte are fairly new now, and their names are very self-explanatory, I guess. And here they are. They come in these bottles that you can squeeze the material out of them. Their consistency is exactly the same. They just dry to different sheens and effects. The iridescent is very beautiful. Liquitex pouring medium was specially designed for acrylic painting, and it contains an acrylic polymer with a high resin strength. And it makes it very sticky, very hard to remove from your hands, but that's what also makes the finish very professional and very smooth. Pouring color is interesting, in my opinion, because it gives you color and shape at the same time. The material flows, usually in a circular organic form. There is the element of chance and uncontrolled movement and mixing that I find fascinating. It's very satisfying seeing color moving, traveling in space, and finding other colors and interacting. So Liquitex mediums and additives are great because they are all intermixable with each other. And with the whole professional color range, it has pH neutral when dry, it does not yellow, it's water resistant, it's flexible, and most importantly, it's archival. All right, let's pour. I'm going to show you now a video of what you will need in order to do a pour. I'm actually talking on this video, so I hope it comes out okay. Let me know if you can't hear it. So what you will need in order to pour is your pouring medium. I've got 3 versions here: the gloss, the iridescent, and the matte. And then maybe you want to mix your color with your medium in a plastic cup maybe, or any container you have. And then you need your color. I'm using Liquitex acrylic ink. But you can also use Liquitex soft body acrylic paint. It works just as well. A funnel is always useful. I always wear gloves because this material is very sticky and very hard to get off your hands. And then maybe to stir your color with your medium, maybe a wooden stirrer, or you can use the back of a brush or a palette knife, whatever you feel like. And then maybe as applicators, you can use one of these squeeze bottles, and then you can pour different colors at the same time. And if you don't want to use it all, you just close the cap and it won't dry. And your surface. So I'm using this wooden board that I had previously primed with acrylic gesso. And I always try to lift the surface from where I'm pouring at, it being a table or your glass palette. It's very sticky, as I said, so and material will flow out from the edges, so it will stick to wherever you're pouring at. So I just lifted from my trolley, and I made this sort of barrier, this foil barrier here. So if material does go beyond this surface, and if it drips into my trolley, it doesn't go anywhere, it stays there. And that's it. Hi. So what you... Hi. Sorry. So I'm gonna make some... So now I'm gonna mix color and medium. Color, let's use the gloss. You will basically just pour medium into your cup. And then some color. Depending on how much ink, sorry, I just realized you're not seeing what I'm doing. Depending on how much ink you use, it will be a bit more transparent or more opaque. Let's use the back of my brush. As you're mixing, this material will have some air bubbles in it once you finish stirring the color. So you would just let it sit for maybe 10 minutes. So the bubbles will go away. There you go. You have your pouring medium and your color. You can pour straight from this cup. You can mix colors like we will do soon, or you can put into one of these squeeze bottles, and that's what I'll do. I don't need the funnel, I know what I'm doing. And I reuse all of my plastic cups. I'm not doing that today just for the sake of appearance, but the cups that I use for this, if I don't wash in time, material will just dry, but you can use it again. Huh? Same goes for the squeeze bottles, but you want to make sure that you clean the applicator. Eagle, you have some color ready to be poured. Right, I must add here, because I'm using ink, but you can also use, as I said, soft body acrylic paint. So I'm just topping up this information with the ratio. If you want to use soft body acrylic paint, the ideal ratio would be 1 tablespoon of color of your soft body acrylic to 1 full cup of pouring medium. And the same process. You mix it in a cup, let it sit for about 10 minutes, and it's ready to pour. But you can also experiment with these measurements, and I like doing that. So finally, we are going to pour some color. So for this pour, I prepared a sort of rainbow palette. So orange, yellow, light green, light blue, dark blue, and black and white also. Sorry, I had my board in front of the colors. This is my first time demonstrating something on a video, so apologies. Some things you only realize later. So yeah, let's pour. So I started pouring 1 color into the previous, pretty much the same kind of idea behind James's presentation. It started creating this concentric circle, but it starts moving at some point, as I think my surface was not totally leveled. And I'm really being very spontaneous as to what colors I pick. I'm just pouring whatever I find in front of me. So this is what this material does, basically. So I started another circle there. The pouring medium will increase the flow of your paint, basically. And it will allow for some interesting mixing to happen as well. You can see that on the edges, material is mixing a little bit. You can use your fingers, or like I'm doing here, or a brush also, to encourage material to flow to a certain direction. And I guess on an ideal scenario, we would be all together around the table and everyone could do a pour. And I hope that's soon. Right, next pour. Here, what I'm doing is I got all the colors that were left from that first pour, all those colors that I used previously. And instead of pouring them from their individual cups, I put them all in the same cup very carefully and very slowly, so they wouldn't mix in the cup. You see that there was some mixing happening, but they kept apart. People call this a dirty pour when you pour more than one color from the same cup. And you can tilt the surface as well to make the material flow towards the edges, and if you want the material to mix a little bit more, very messy activity, as you see. And then just to disrupt a bit what I had poured and to use the rest of my color I had in the cup, just doing another pour on top. I had the light green and the black at the bottom of my cup. Checking my work. So yeah, this is the result. You can see that there are some air bubbles at the bottom there. You can just pop them with your finger for a very smooth finish. Oh, you can see my phone there. Right, here I put my mix into squeeze bottles so I can have a little bit more control when I'm pouring. I'm going to try to pour separate puddles of color next to each other and then see what happens. I went for a red and a dark purple moment there. I forgot to say I'm using the matte medium here on this pour. I was using the gloss medium on the previous two pours. So yeah, you can help the material with the tip of your fingers. You can tidy up the edges. And like I did before, you can tilt the surface if you want to have some mixing happening and some movement. Yeah, you can see that it started kind of mixing here, quite like that. And for this next pour, I'm reusing a surface that I had poured previously and mixed and I didn't like. Color became very muddy, but I still had some material left on the surface. I scraped some off. You can see that there is a little bit more material, and I had poured also color previously anyway on that surface. And I'm using my little foil tray that is catching all the overflow from my previous pours. And I'm gonna stamp my surface into that pool of color. I really like it. You never know how it's gonna turn out when you do this. So it's a game of chance, really. And yeah, you can pop the air bubbles with your finger and tidy the edges. That's it. And then again, reusing a surface that wasn't my favorite, we're going to cover it completely. I decided to be even more experimental with this pour. Here I'm just spreading medium, just medium. In this case, the iridescent medium. I'm gonna cover the whole surface. And then with a pipette for each color, I'll drip one color into another. I had to speed up this video, otherwise we would sit here all afternoon. So yeah, my idea for this pour was to have these dark circles and then just have color, hints of color around them. So the whole composition is a bit more muted, I guess. Yeah, you can blow into the surface as well to move things a little bit if you wish. Pop those bubbles. There you have it. Sorry, it's a bit out of focus here. Maybe if I go back a little bit, you'll be able to see it still like this. Yeah, so this is the result of that pour. Skins. Skins are amazing. So with this material, you can make paint skins. So you can collage them later into your surfaces. The image you're seeing here are the skins I made to use later as a collage element. You can use then something like a gloss heavy gel medium, also from Liquitex, or the matte gel or any gel, or even soft body acrylic paint as a glue to apply the skins onto your surface. And I'll keep these skins archived until I need them, and you should keep them between something like baking paper or just paper. Otherwise they'll just stick to each other if you pile them up all together, and then you might rip them when you try to take them apart. So you will need, for pouring a skin, one clean glass surface, or perhaps an acrylic sheet, clean acrylic sheet. I'll show you in a minute. You'll do this pour on top of the surface. You will wait 24 hours and carefully peel it off with a palette knife. So I'm gonna pour a skin here for you to see. Apologies if the video is dark. Well, it's not dark actually, it's okay. I went for red and green, you know, for the visual tension. And I'm using the matte pouring medium here. So disregard the other pouring I did at the top right. It didn't work. So I'm gonna pour another circle, and I'm just gonna mix those two, make those two circles meet. Something happened on my editing, and you won't see me doing that. You see what I mean in a while. So yeah, what I did is I just encouraged the material to meet, and this is next day. So I left it drying overnight, and then in the afternoon, next afternoon, I came to the studio to peel it off from my glass palette. So you will carefully lift the edges of your pour with a palette knife, ideally. That's what I'm doing there. There you have it, a matte skin that you can collage onto a surface using, like I said, something like a heavy gel or just acrylic paint as a glue. And you can use either side. I really like the back. And because it's flexible, you can collage onto canvas and it won't crack. And this is a better lighted image of that pour just before I left for the day. You see that the material did flow a little bit more towards this way here. I think my table wasn't leveled as well. And here are some examples of things I made using these mediums. This looks like a river aerial view, isn't it? Like a landscape scene from above. And you can see here that I'm pointing with my mouse where the material was flowing out of the surface. It kind of recorded this movement of the color. This is a gloss pouring medium. Another example, also very interesting mixing. It reminds me of marbling as well. And then the iridescent medium, two things I did in the studio using the iridescent medium. And like I said, pouring, beyond being satisfying to watch, it does add that element of chance, allowing the material to make some decisions for you, if not all decisions for you, because you will have a form and a color by pouring. I like that once you pour, you will never know how it's going to turn out. The material will do what it likes to do. It's totally out of your control. And the versatility of this material means that you can take these ideas and make it your own. You can continue painting on top, adding either other pours or any Liquitex color or medium. You can see that on this one on the right, I added a little black frame on this work. And if you would like to subscribe to the Fine Art Collective to receive their newsletter, you can just scan this QR code, just point your phone camera there, and it will take you to the subscription form, or you can just type the Fine Art Collective on Google. And you can also check Colart's website, and you will find links there to all their brands, such as Liquitex, Winsor Newton, La Franc Bourgeois, Conti à Paris. They have nice tutorials online and master classes that you can watch to help you navigate their products. And if I have time, do I have time, Joe?
To do what?
A little reading.
Yes, of course. And there's some questions. It's okay. We're good.
Should we do the questions first?
No, do you? Well, whichever way you want to do it. No,
okay,
let's go on. Yeah, do your reading.
I'll do the reading. So yeah, I would like to read you a poem I wrote in response to a painting. I still don't know who this painting is from. It kind of relates to this liquid quality of the material we were exploring together today. And this is part of a project where we were given, me and another 9 people were given an anonymous image, and we were asked to respond with words. And this is my response, and it's my first ever poem, so I thought it would be relevant to read it today, I guess. Anyway. Drencher. Dislocated yet unlocated habitat, nurturing a blind glare. I'll be pacing in a saturated dark glow. Wet memories, placed memories, space medium memories, not always vague memories. Still, over space, somber place, transformed. Nightly foliage spreads boundlessly on vigorous fluid, pouring out, uninterrupted rippling or trickling, and issuing overflowing fragments of remembered storms. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We've got a lot of, we've got time as well, but quite a lot of brilliant, and I loved your poem. We've got some questions. Sorry, if I'm looking at the sound, I couldn't do it. Can you see in the chat? And it's good to start at 11:27. They began. Would these? You may have answered some of these in your talk, but if just go through them, if you could, Gabby.
Yeah.
With the pouring mediums work with acrylic gouache. Yeah.
Acrylic gouache. Yes, acrylic gouache. Yes, you can.
Yeah.
You can. You would have probably a more matte sort of effect. I haven't tried gouache, but the acrylic gouache will basically behave the same way if you use Liquitex.
Yeah, because it's just like to like, isn't it?
Yeah, I would recommend just using the same brand. If you want to use gouache, just go for Liquitex, and it goes for the ink, the acrylic ink, and for the soft body acrylic paint. Just use the same brand.
And can you draw into the mixture? Well, you demonstrated that. Can you?
Yeah, I think you can.
Yeah.
Sky the limit.
Can you paint on top of the pour when it's dry?
Yeah. I would not recommend. I've tried, and I don't think it provides a good tooth, or it doesn't have any absorbency at all. So don't use, I wouldn't recommend maybe oil paint on top.
Never.
But yeah, with acrylic paint, you can either do another pour or just use acrylic paint, or acrylic paint with a medium of your choice. Yeah.
And what's the medium made of? It's
made of an acrylic polymer and resin. I'm not a chemist, that's all I know.
Yeah, it's what it is on, and I wouldn't tell you the whole thing anyway. Would the pouring work on a primed surface, paper canvas? Yes.
Yeah, so basically you can pour into any surface.
Yeah.
The first pour, I forgot to mention, it was primed. My little board was primed. The other ones, I don't remember, probably not. But yeah, you can pour on any surface, really.
Can you please put the website link for the Slade workshop subscriber here? Can you do that? I don't know.
For the what?
The website link.
Ah, yeah, okay. Can I? Let's see. Not sure. Hang Hang on a second.
Maybe you can do it later. Find it and do it later.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Yeah, sorry, and I missed one. Could you put the names of the artists you referred to into the chat, please?
Yeah. So.
Blimey, you lot, why don't you just listen?
English. Who else? Frank Bowling.
Oh, wonderful, Frank Bowling.
Who else?
Fantastic presentation. Thank you. Thank you. Love poems. Great presentation. Thank you. Lovely poem. Amazing.
Thank you, Joe.
That is all what other people are saying. It's not me.
Okay. I'm just reading the comments. I'm just typing the artist here. Hold flower.
There's no more questions, I don't think. I'm just going to say a few things.
Andre.
Just while you're doing that, I've been very privileged to work with Gabriella when she was a student at the Slade, and a couple of years after she became the honorary research associate for the material. Well, last year, wasn't it? It was last year. Or the last year. Yeah. And we worked quite closely together, and it's very, very lucky to have you, and you shared a lot of your passions and your intelligence towards materials, and you gave a wonderful workshop on the different kind of marks that you make and the different sort of tools that you made yourself to make the shapes and to make the surfaces of your paintings. Do you want to talk about that just for a minute?
Yeah, I think I really like using different tools that are not a brush in order to apply color on the surface. So I came up with all different kinds of tools over the years, I guess, from using forks and brushes and hair combs and whatever, mops and rags, and you know, just making my own brushes as well with things I find, and they all contribute to the painting and to have this uniqueness of application that I find interesting. I do use brushes, normal, regular brushes, but I do like to also paint with my hands and use different sorts of things. I think I like to be inventive, and I think one thing with my work is that I always try with every different work to do something that I've never done before. So yeah, I think that is part of my practice.
Yeah. Well, you are a wonderful artist, and when I was thinking of things for people, you know, little gifts, what came into my mind was the Bryce Marden Terre Verte series. And I'm just going to read this little bit from those series of 10 paintings he made using 10 different brands of Terre Verte. And it makes me think of you. I kept putting the same color on, the same color. But every time I put it on, it was different. Every time it was this new light color experience. It was not a revelation, but a whole wonderful new experience. To me, it involves harnessing some of the powers of the earth. And I think that suits you down to the ground. And so I haven't got them all here, but I've got 10 different Terre Vertes. 8 of them are from really are pigments from different places. The others are products, if you see what I mean. And one's from Poland, and this one here is from Verona, which I thought was also
amazing.
So,
thank you, Jo.
No, thank you. That was fantastic. Thank you, Gabby. Brilliant. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to move on. And hopefully, I think Matteo is there. I think I'm a couple of minutes early. Is Matteo there?
I am, yes.
Hello.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm okay, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. I'm a little bit tired, day 3, but it's good. It's relaxed. The sun's shining in Kentish Town, and it looks like it's shining through your window wherever you are.
Yes, yeah, it is. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Matteo, you're going to give a poetry reading. Sorry, this is Matteo, who is Austin Dean, who is an artist, poet, and activist. And it's all right to say, you know, and you left the Slade last year, graduated, I should say, left. It makes it sound like you had a temper. But you've been wonderful, had a wonderful exhibition online this last year, but it kind of suited a lot of your work, I suppose. So not the same, but hopefully this year there's going to be evidence of it in the building. So anyway, Matteo, thank you for being here and your poetry reading.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much for having me. I'm honored to be here. It's been great so far. It's sort of inspired by all the wonderful discussion of blue yesterday. I thought I'd wear this kind of shiny blue shirt. Yes, the sun is shining very nicely here in Portsmouth. And I'm going to read a couple of poems. The first two are about a hill called Portsdown Hill, which is a kind of highly tautologous name for a chalk ridge that marks the northern boundary of Portsmouth, where I'm from and where I grew up and where I am now. And everything to the south of the hill is very flat and watery, densely populated, urban, low-lying. But everything above the hill, everything to the north of the hill is rolling fields and hills with seemingly no people at all. When I was growing up, it always seemed like a kind of magical boundary to me, where the sort of color changed from the grays and blues of the city and the sea to the endless rolling green and brown of the fields and the hills. But along with this kind of nurturing, this very soft, chalky landscape, which nurtured these delicate ecosystems that you get on chalk downland, that along with that kind of softness, there's a sort of history of imperial violence. There's the Napoleonic fortifications, imperialistic monuments, and also, as well as that kind of older form of imperialism, there's contemporary military research and development sites all along the hill. So it's kind of a contradictory space that I'm very interested in. So this first poem is called Nelson's Monument, Portsdown. The kite undresses thin chalk soil, blessed by cow's feet and teeth, by wind. Harbour mouth whistles miles of perfect toil. Island teeth and sandy gums uncoil, all before ground hallowed by shell bodies lined. The kite undresses thin chalk soil. Here stands shrinking granite bloody intruder royal, grey-brown death striking the skies maligned. Harbour mouth whistles miles of perfect toil. Nelson's head with Ethiopia's stolen body spoiled. It wounds skies too in Bridgetown and Dublin. The kite undresses thin chalk soil. Land without city or tidal spoil rolls in gaping fields, green throats seeded, lined. Harbour mouth whistles miles of perfect toil. There, drying blood sits like a latex foil, thin and stinking in spring. Column ridge behind. The kite undresses thin chalk soil. And the flint skulls, colonial sand spoils, fall, stick to the slope, whose beauty hides sins. The kite undresses thin chalk soil. Harbour mouth whistles miles of perfect toil. Thank you. This next one is called Beyond Portsdown Hill. Already past in the golden light falling, long across well-chewed grass, violent mound, already inert, useless before sealess eyeing. And bold is the soil, thin, dry dust, here found, resting a moment on hot air, danced veil, hand on the warm mist, stretched across this valley's ground, joining each body from the fine earth, pale and interrupted by teeth, jump energetic yellow petals, stout orchids, purple and green palm lime scale. These sharpened teeth of flint, skulls of flint below, almost rounded flakes of flint underfoot, black, blue, orange, white, prone and crop shadow. The teeth are aching in the coming of the night, put closely upon the hills and our dark eyes, where dies history's flashing hill light dot. Next to the dark green verge, butterflies, shadowy spray, the chalk path and this light shines, tempting the future with old names and skies, having called me out skyward along chalk lines. Thank you. The next poem I'm going to read is, I mean, the previous two poems I just read are from during the first lockdown, when I was going on a lot of walks through the city of Portsmouth and on the hill and beyond the hill. But this next poem is from before the pandemic, and it's very different. It's from a kind of body of work I was doing, sort of around the image and the symbol of the cutty wren, as looking at that as a latent English and Welsh kind of revolutionary folkloric symbol. So I'll just read that. The cutty wren and rebirth. The pieces of that body on the night stone, dark, kingly bird, panting, hopping in hands, palm air, holds all, memories of mud, metamorphic dreaming. All the secrets of birth soon be screaming from your wings' blood, when the mountain of your scepter is drunk as rain, baby clay mouths, baby men on the wet plains, sugar burnt, flood unfolded in the new stomach, your skin hung in gourd, body, red muscle counting grains. Oh, wonder of all the myths drained from the sack, from vessels, the sky dethroning commodities when your sugary wings have torn. I have learnt new earth from your skinless body, your wingless body, your bottled violence, river drowned, your death is wet morning in our fists. Thank you. So this last poem I'm going to read is very, very recent. It's from a body of work I'm working on at the moment, kind of looking at the colonial history of soap, and also the ideologies of the colonial ideologies around cleanliness, and also thinking about soap as a commodity, as a site of labor, and also as a power relation. I would contend in all of our lives today, as cleaning and cosmetic rituals are extended and socially enforced in our lives as a form of a kind of reproductive labor in the Marxian sense. And I think this is especially interesting in the context of COVID, and how we're all needing to wash our hands, and we're thinking about washing our hands more, and also the huge soapy wealth being amassed by the soap corporations. It's a very shocking history, that of soap. And yes, I mean, also talking of iridescence, you know, it's soap has all these kind of wonderful iridescent refractive kind of color qualities that I think are interesting to explore as well. So it doesn't have a title yet, because, as I say, it's very new. So I'll just read that now for you. Trees and walls, bent doubly into a cruel circular dislodging, multicolored mirrors and extra birch, curled around white, dotted geometric light. Burning into the bubble, the center has fallen through the rainbow membrane, the foaming refraction, the disease of soap, bubbling the skins hung from feeble masts of company ships, endless bodies made filthy by soap, crying and scratching and shaking in the endless wintry showers, in the endless bathrooms and cubicles and houses and flats. The body is not sinful. The body is not dirty. The body is not clean. We must not fear the body. We must not extend the bloody toil wrought for the earth and children over our skins. Cleanliness, burning green fires on ancient land. Cleanliness, killing the humming lungs. Cleanliness, cures and experiments killing unaccountably. Cleanliness, palm oil and death. Cleanliness, palms foaming, sore and cratered. Cleanliness, imp dancing on the red festooned border. Cleanliness, forced into the printed cardboard of whiteness, the savage ideology of universal white neutrality. Cleanliness, locked away from all bodies. Cleanliness, eroding the hourly washing of old. Cleanliness, locked deep, locked high, locked away by white-soaked jailers, fat, gruesome, soapy kings. White myth theft born on the bubbling tide. Soap is not kind or clean. Soap is palm oil and alkali. Chalk mouths heaving forth the rolling nuts and suds. Death triangle loudly replaced by the endless jagged green lines with lazy spider shadows. The century's deep green grid. Steaming blue sweat of the orange nutty bowl. And grinding. Oily soap bars towering the house. The white columns by Blackfriars Bridge. Sloping off into the distant streets. Like new rows of incisors. Calcified, milky, and smug. Thank you. That's everything.
Oh, that's wonderful. Absolutely.
Thank you.
It's so good to hear you again. Sort of, the last time I heard you, well, I heard you on the Poetry Shed, but in life was the last time was at the book launch at last February.
Oh, yeah, it was so long ago.
Yeah, well, just over a year ago. So yeah, it is absolutely wonderful and a very powerful last poem, breathtaking. Thank you, Matteo.
Thank you.
But you often sing, don't you, as well? I'm not asking you to unless you wanted to, but you do. I mean, was that wonderful evening when we booked, we launched the book I keep sharing up to people, and it was it was expected. We were in that room and everyone was relaxed and drinking, and then you gave a number of people gave presentations, and there was suddenly this extraordinary, started to sing this sort of, was it a shanty? I can't remember now, something like a shanty or shanty, I can't remember now, but I just remember this extraordinary, the way the sound filled that room, and everybody just was sort of had kind of tingles going up their spines or whatever.
Thank you. You're very kind.
No.
It was like it was based on a Sussex hunting song, but it was I wrote the words myself before I sung that. But yeah, I do a lot of singing, and the Cutty Wren, the third poem, that figure is a kind of a folk song figure from, I think it's from the 14th century. There's a song that dates back to the peasant revolt, and this song and this bird becomes a kind of symbol of communal property in the face of feudalism. Yeah, so I mean, yeah, singing is a big thing for me. Yeah.
Do you get a different sensation? You must do. Of course, it's a stupid question, I suppose. I was just thinking of of reciting your poems, reading your poems, and then singing. There must be a kind of very different sensation that you have with that. You know, like the difference between drawing and painting, I suppose, or I don't know. Does it?
Yes, yeah. I guess that's an analogous comparison. I think, yeah, it is different, but there's a lot of similarity. And like Sharon was saying, was it yesterday, no, day before yesterday, about thinking of poetry as a musical composition, and thinking about what the lineation and the rhythm and the meter, what they do as a kind of musical, formation. Yeah, so there are certainly relationships, and I'm always interested in that sort of process of oral culture that you get with folk song, and thinking about that in relation to the poetry, and how to embed those kind of ancient rhythms in the poetry, and what the politics of that is as well. So yeah, they're similar but different.
Yeah, oh, that was brilliant. Thank you. And I'm going to send you. You may or you may not want it actually. But what I have got for you, some Eingol ink I made. I make it all the time, but I collected these particular galls that first Sunday after lockdown, which I think that was Mother's Day that year. And but I got a bit of that ink, and I just would like to think of you drawing with some of my ink. So I'm going to send that to you as a
thank you so much. That's so kind of you.
You'll have to give me your address though, so you might not want that, but yeah.
Oh yes, I will.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Jo.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's brilliant. And that's wonderful. We're now going to move on to Geraldine Snell. Hello, Geraldine. I know you're there somewhere. Hello? Hello, there you are. Hello, Geraldine.
How is my sound? Can you hear me?
For some reason, on my screen, I don't know if this is me. Oh, I suppose I should spotlight you. There we are.
Is that good?
Yes, this is Geraldine Snell. Incantations, a live performance using looped vocal observations of an immediate environment with devotional and presence aiding intent. Thank you, Geraldine. Go for it.
Exactly. Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Your sound might be a little low, maybe.
Sounds low. Okay, let's go for it.
I'll leave Sarah to deal with that.
Okay, it might sound a little low when I'm speaking, but it's going to get a lot louder when I layer the loops.
Yes, much better now. Yeah,
that'd be good. Okay, hello everyone. As Jo Volley said, I am Geraldine Snell. There's my name written down, drawn even, and I'm going to be performing for you some incantations. Title for this particular incantation is "To each ... a devotional attention exercise," with an emphasis on hearing here. So I'll put that back there. knowing form, but missing essence, greater presence here in me. Bottle dusk, window sill, sweet taste, Falmouth waves you, bulldog cliff, headphone, bicycle with helmet, lactosing shelters, greater easels, door I give my love, bottle dusk, window sweet taste, Falmouth waves you, bulldog cliff, headphone, bicycle with helmet, lactosing shelters, greater easels, some colours now. Door I give my love, bottle dusk, window sage, white and flash you, bulldog cliff, headphone, bicycle with helmet, lactosing shelters, greater easels, door I give my love, bottle dusk, window sage, white and flash you, bulldog cliff, headphone, bicycle with helmet, lactosing shelters, greater easels, door I give my love, bottle dusk, window sage, white and flash you, bulldog cliff, headphone, bicycle with helmet, lactosing shelters, greater easels, door I give my love, bottle dusk, window sage, white and flash you, bulldog cliff, headphone, bicycle with helmet, lactosing shelters, greater easels, door I give my love, bottle dusk, window sage, white and black, bulldog cliff, headphone, bicycle, helmet, lactosing shelter, belt, easel, door I give my love, bottle dusk, window sage, white and black, bulldog cliff, headphone, bicycle, helmet, lactosing shelter, belt, easel, Thank you.
Thank you, Geraldine. That made me feel unbelievably emotional. I don't know why. It was wonderful. Thank you so much. It did put me in mind of I've forgotten the name. Lucier's I'm Sitting in a Room. Are you influenced by Lucier?
I don't know that.
Oh, well, I better send it to you then.
Definitely.
Okay. Could you talk a little bit about, not to dispel, because it was so magical and people have put ethereal, hypnotic, meditative. But could you talk, not to take away from that, could you talk a little bit? We've got a few minutes. You could talk about your process.
Certainly, yeah.
Thank you.
I think I feel quite emotional as well, actually.
I bet you do.
It's those
Yeah.
violins, so to speak. I think the so I have various things that are going on, really. There's the writing, which usually it's kind of, I don't know, there'll be a phrase or poetry in a sense, playing with being playful with language and being playful with how things sound. So but there's often like maybe a mantra basis to some of it. So I guess I'm saying this as if this comes first, but I think sometimes the melody actually comes first, or the melodies like lead everything for me, but also the drawings of the text become like a score almost. So for example, the way that this one worked, the incantations, there's a few different ones, and generally I don't know if there's like an instruction of some kind, or there's an act, as opposed to, sorry, not an instruction, if it's more of like you're trying to manifest something, or there's an awareness or attention given to something, then maybe it's an incantation. Or you're trying to create different states. So there's another one I have called Mind, well, it's called Be Gone, but it's about like eradicating mind bile. So they've got a kind of spell-like quality, really. But then the in terms of the melodies and the music, I think they're often an attempt to, in this woman in particular, it's kind of paradoxical because I'm trying to like get away from verbal experience of just like having to label things by kind of evolving that and abstracting that into sound and then melody, which becomes much more ethereal and ungraspable. But I guess that's the struggle we all have with having one of these, isn't it? One of these heads. So I guess maybe that's the little introduction. Don't know if anyone's got particular questions, but yeah,
just to talk about Alvin Lucia, that you didn't know, it's quite interesting because it's a piece, it was a 1969 electronic musical piece he made, and he recorded himself, I'm reading it from it just so I get it right, narrating a text and then playing the tape recording back into the room and re-recording it, and this kind of goes on.
I have seen it. Sorry,
yeah,
I've heard that. Of course I have.
Yes,
and
it just put me in mind of that. And sorry, because that's what happens when you, I suppose, when you're an artist and you also teach. You know, it's quite difficult sometimes to see something in isolation. You know, you just start thinking of.
Oh no, completely. I know all about that because I teach as well. But actually, it was it was through the Slade that I heard that piece. So Ben was one of my tutors and organised a listening party in lockdown. So we had a listening party where we were all at home in our own rooms listening to Lucia's.
Right. It was featured in there was a symposium a good few years ago that Sam Belinfante organised, and it was brilliant. And they did a recording of it there as well. It's fantastic. Anyway, that was wonderful. What does one ask you, really? Just to say thank you, and also to say that you also graduated from MA this year, didn't you? Did you graduate?
I did, yeah, I did. So hopefully we'll be back in some form, in real life, with something live, whenever the show is going to be.
Yeah, whenever. And spookily enough, I had 2 fluorescent colours for you.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Oh my God.
I love the pink and green.
I know, and I don't know how I know that. And also that you're dressed.
Yeah.
I should have put a bit of yellow in as well, I think.
Look,
I can do that. I can do that as well. But they're fluorescent. They don't show up. But I just thought of you and thought, that's what I'll have for Geraldine. So,
oh, wonderful. Well, that's
yeah.
on brand and very spring-like as well.
Yeah.
So thanks so much, Jo.
Thank you for that wonderful and so beautiful. I know this might not fit, but it's not unlike Sophie Ellis-Bextor. I don't know, sorry, and her Kitchen Disco. But totally different at the same. I don't know who Sophie Ellis-Bextor is.
That is a high praise. Yeah, high praise. She's
she's
a pop star, but she was doing kitchen discos in lockdown. So she was having just her and her kids at home.
Yeah, it sounds not up my street. But also what Alexandra Losh, who's speaking tomorrow on Beatrice Irwin, so hopefully you can make that. She said, I think Beatrice Irwin would really enjoy Geraldine's performance. So hopefully you can have time to come tomorrow and listen to Alexandra. But thanks again. Brilliant.
Thank you.
And last but not least this morning is Benjamin Arthur Brown.
Hey, Jo.
Hello, mate. How are you?
I'm not bad. How are you?
I'm good. We're getting there. It's been a fantastic 2.5 days.
It's been really brilliant, Yeah, thank you to everyone. You and everyone who organised it, I think.
Fantastic. Anyway, this is Benjamin Arthur Brown. I know him as Ben. He's an artist and poet. He's also curator at the Van Gogh House in London. And if you've never been, you should go when you're allowed to. It's the most wonderful place. Talking about emotional, I always find, as you know, I always find it very emotional there. But anyway, Ben's here today with his artist poets hat on, I suppose, or just poets hat. I'm not quite sure what he can do, but thank you, and go ahead.
Thank you, Jo. So I thought I would try and find a poem as a kind of introduction. So here is a short poem. I only ever write short poems, like how my phone is in the habit of autocorrecting the word write to wrote, like it's trying to tell me something, and how that scares me. So one of my other hats is as a conservation technician in the kind of museum sector. And it's a really wonderful job, and I get to work with really beautiful pieces of art and creative output. But I found myself doing a rather tedious job not too long ago. And I try to say that I never can be bored, but in this case, I turned to poetry to stave off boredom. So this poem is called Ziploc Bags. There was something a little pathetic about the way they stored all the Ziploc bags in another identical Ziploc bag, as if it was some post-industrial counter-consumerist analogy for cannibalism. They were purchased, so the sticker informed me, from a supplier for industrial food manufacturers. Each bag could fit snugly over a human head, being perhaps a little too large for my sandwich alone. So when I first arrived at Slade, I kind of thought I would be the next great painter, and then I was in a year group with really fantastic painters and sculptors, and that's when I decided, I'll try my hand at poetry, because no one else seemed to be doing that at that point. So this is actually one of the very first poems that I wrote at Slade, and I think it has these kind of yearnings of trying to be a painter and probably failing. So here we go. Autumn light, so blinding, shines in and off a haze of amber orange leaves, Van Dyke brown painted with a touch like Rembrandt, trees crimson, lime, tendrils, ink drips across a milk-dyed blue translucent sky, Fidgety worlds of grey, green, brown spread liquid across footfalls. Toes in worn shoes squelch the mud, fresh dew grass, gentle pad of pads in frozen mud-encrusted leaves. Bark the dog, passing, pleasant inquiring gazes of tourist, local, and babe in arms. The dog-head dryads dance and bark and dance some more. Thick-armed trees bald. The air smells cold, comfortably cold, air you can kiss, a promise of friendship, talks of the weather and the fading light kind of cold. The next one is called I Tried to Draw a Fire. I tried to draw a fire, but its dancing eludes me. I tried to draw a fire, but the colors confuse me. I tried to draw a fire, but it's night and I should sleep. I tried to draw a fire, but instead I sit and stare. I tried to draw a fire, but my fingers catch a light, burning the paper, pencil, image, all gone in seconds. So not too long ago, although maybe it is long ago, I found myself in Venice when the Architecture Biennale was on, and a discovery I made when out there was that the Papal Island also runs a kind of poetry, not poetry, architecture competition, or at least kind of has numerous chapels dotted over the island. So I took a kind of wander around there. And this is a poem that came out of an experience of walking into one of those chapels. So it's called The Corpse in the Chapel. I found a dead dragonfly in the chapel of white glass tiles. Its face was turned from the lead Bible, mottled in the light, and past showers from heaven, precipitation not godly. I'd squeezed through a doorway only a foot wide, shivering, kicking at the wood chips, left side in spasm when I noticed the corpse. A moment of reflection. It was left staring back, itself mirrored and bleached through the polished white glass of the pews. My face in it in this place, a misery chord to modernism. As I said, when I first started at Slade, I kind of took up writing and poetry and knew nothing really about poetry, and probably still don't. But I think that's the beauty of writing, is that it can kind of be anything. A poem can be a joke, it can be a short story, it can be a statement, it can be a list. So this, in effect, I guess, is a short horror story, but a poem. So it's called Pearls. Sitting at the kitchen table, bleached in a low sun, I seemed transfixed. I couldn't move, just stare straight forward, right into the eyes of the washing machine as it cycles round and round. My hand travelled up to my cheek, completely of its own accord. I sensed something loose in my mouth. Initially hard, it seemed to soften and smooth. Cupping my tongue and rolling against the roof of my mouth, I was successful in completely rounding the small, stone-like thing. Again, against any will of my dreaming mind, my hand acted, reaching past my teeth, it plucked the object out. No sooner than I had recognized it as a pearl did No sooner than I had recognized it as a pearl did I feel two more stones at the back of my throat. Narrowly avoiding choking myself, I repeated the procedure again and again, again and again and again. And again, I plucked perfect iridescent spheres from my lips until I had filled a small bowl to the brim. The sound of the washing machine countered only by the regular pulse of porcelain on china. Just as my hand returned for what seemed like the 100th time, I was awake, the taste of blood and congealing stickiness cementing my breath. I'd bitten the tip of my tongue clean off, rolled it around my mouth and promptly swallowed it straight down. And the final poem that I will read is called Old Albion. And I was lucky enough to be awarded a commendation from the Shakespeare Birthplace Trust just after graduating from Slade. And I was actually really ill for the reading of that. So my only memory of it is kind of grasping a lectern and sweating profusely. So hopefully this goes a little better. So this is Old Albion. A pub that hangs lethargic and barrel-chested, spilling beyond itself into the meat-strewn stream. Pier legs nobbled and nibbled, a sickly pallor and barnacles wrecked across a shoreline, sludged, reeking. Night pleasant. A soaked mattress marbled, residue, a decade of damp. A broken window leans on itself triumphant. Sight doubled, a reflection of the lunar rabbit, fussed crescent moon dropping through air-blasted sky, bruised the color of the deep ocean. Light stains the concrete, fog thick and dab at the eyes. Clouds and twilight white amongst the crows and ravens on Rye Lane Common, feathered black, stark against the grey, thin sheet ice, blue mud and yellowed grasses quilted together. The colours defeat, the horizon is lost. They pillage the space between solid and liquid, so present yet. Hyperreal nightmare, purple bleeds grey, glazed green, red. Brushstrokes hang wet paint, oily sky above, scenes below. The night is set. As the ball of fire burns itself out, extinguished in the sea, the wood and the hills. Cross fingers till the circulation returns. Stale grey of the city pulled away, sitting, staring down at the sun, burnt into the back of the brain, setting, fixing, congealing a sunset, blood and gold against the wash of the sky. Could swim, drowned in the low light sort of night. Fields flood, trees abandon their roots, horizontal stretching, soaked, sopping, warty. Murky colours of November and wet smell mulch, damp, rotten, blackening yellow leaves, trod down under new trainers. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That was wonderful to hear you.
Oh, thank you, Jo.
Really, really wonderful. I didn't know that you felt like that. That's why you turned to poetry, because you're a pretty good painter. I remember you were the first year and the sculptures you made. But could you talk a little bit, not about how you feel about that, but the relationship between the visual work you make, and of course that's very visual as well, the writing, but between the writing and I suppose painting and the sculptures that you make?
Yeah, I guess I have probably kind of hoarding tendencies, so I kind of accumulate a lot of things and find lots of things very interesting, and I think a way of that can obviously become quite overwhelming. So what I found with writing is, or for me, that every word, very much like color, a single word can have multitudes and multiples and numerous meanings and tones, and that in a way at least led me to kind of think in a more kind of minimalist way, or a more kind of stripped back way, which I think I'm still trying at with my visual art. That often it's a process of accumulation and then pulling bits out or letting it kind of fall apart, and with paintings, cutting them up and seeing if that's a better kind of approach. Yeah.
But you're still making work.
Yeah, definitely.
Very, very, very active. Yeah. Anyway, that has been a most fantastic morning, everyone. Thank you for the audience. Thank you to all of the performers, speakers, and we had the extra advantage of, of seeing Philida Barlow. Oh, Ben, I've got something for you. I forgot. I do this at the end of everyone. I've forgotten. I've got this wonderful cuttlefish pigment. It is the most rich, deep, full brown. Great resonance.
Thank you.
Like you. So.
Oh my gosh, thank you, Jo. That's very kind.
Brown. So, and I'm looking forward to this April. I'll be coming to make my timeline.
Indeed, yes.
And Ben is a person who very kindly prepared the ground for me for my timeline at the Van Gogh house. But anyway, thank you, everyone. We'll see you at 2. I'm told by Rob Kessler that it's actually also World Frog Day, apparently. But anyway, hopefully see you all at 2 when we have George Surtees, Ian Rowlands, Ishwari Balaruan, Leonie Rushman, and the Slade Poetry Shed. So thanks very much, all of you. See you later. Bye.